good day, and good evening. As you know, as we always say, it does not really matter what time, day, night, or evening that you listen to the podcast of Amalinda Baptist. You are now live with the best chocolate man out here, which is Randy, and I am with my co-host, my vanilla pastor, Pastor Donovan, Mr. Barker. I haven't called him.
I haven't called Vanilla Pasta.
I haven't called him Vanilla in 2 weeks because Mrs. Barker was away. But yeah, she's back. And they did a podcast together last week without me because
that's what you get for calling him Vanilla all the time.
I was injured, but I'm not going to say how because the story is not so great. But
as long as it's nothing like your wife abused you, or, because maybe that's why we're here today. Like we're here to sort out this.
I mean, I'm glad you can read between the lines. Hey, man.
I knew there was a reason they brought us here.
We have the lovely Mrs. Barker back for a second episode.
Yeah.
Hi, Annabelle.
Hello.
And we have a foreigner in the house.
No.
All the way from?
Apparently, she came into the country with a crocodile.
The
she was surfing. She surfed into the country, but apparently, the rumor is she married me for
what? So Randy's
that green card.
Randy's the crocodile
But I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I mean, I'm a lovely chocolate person. I mean, she loves me.
Bro, I was here for 28 years. How is that even?
Sorry?
28 years.
28 years?
Yeah, I've been in South Africa for 28 years, so...
I thought for a second you were saying you married for 20 years.
Yeah, I was also confused for a second. I was like, what?
A long time.
Must have slept through most of it. But yeah, man, you came into the country when you were 2 years old, right?
Yeah, when I was 2.
She's Tanzanian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
didn't know anything about it until I met her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you can't really tell that she's foreign, but she is.
But I guys, I came with a plane, not a crocodile.
We don't know. We don't know. We only know what you tell us.
Oh my God.
But it's good to have you. I mean, this is your first podcast. We have Donnell behind the camera and Sven, another married couple over there. They've been serving us for... What episode is it? Episode 6?
Oh, yeah. I think this is our 6th episode we're doing now.
These are the guys that make all this happen. So we would love to say thank you to Sven and Donnell. We appreciate you guys so much. To all married people, Duran and Shani. Yes, David and Michaela. We're all going to meet after this. Sorry if you're not invited, okay? It's okay.
Next time.
But onto the podcast. The married couple. Mrs. Barker, how was your episode last week?
Just good. I enjoyed having good conversations with your vanilla pasta over there.
What I want to know is why would you call your husband Pastor Bay? You threw some awkward names out there.
He's my pastor.
Yes.
And he's also my babe. Like self-explanatory.
How do you feel about that, Pastor Donovan?
That is not my favorite title. It is not my favorite title. I feel like I need to go on a vacation.
Good. At least you're not proper vacation.
Can't believe Pastor Donovan just said
where you make very lame jokes.
But yeah, man, it's great to have you ladies on the podcast. Just to let everybody know, we did say that we married multiple times, and these are our wives. That's Mrs. Barker, and I'm not going to say my last name, but yeah, that's my wife over there.
It's Mrs. Randy.
Yes, Mrs. Randy. Yes, I like that one. Yes.
Mrs. Randy.
Mrs. Randy has an identity.
My wife, Evelyn. Guys, how was Sunday? I didn't hear the message because I was with the kids.
Yeah.
And you side eyes me.
I was thrown in, well, I wasn't thrown, but I volunteered to watch over the kids. So how was Sunday, guys? What was the message?
It was good. I'm just going to say what stood out the most to me. I think the whole of Ephesians, actually, in general, has been, well, from what we have read up to, has been very like it has stages. So it keeps, every time you listen to the message, you're like, yo. And it keeps like the yours keep yoing. So the message last week for me was when, especially when you were talking about sin and how you are, sin does not seem like it's such a bad thing because you're only getting like one step closer to the cliff until you actually get to the cliff. And you have to do like one wrong thing and then you fall over. And I remember coming home and I was telling him about it. I'm like, that stood out to me a lot because we look at our everyday life as Christians and how you were talking about how Christianity and the church is conforming so much to the world, making the world comfortable, you know, and allowing the world to pretty much like, okay, I'm not going to meet you halfway, but I'm going to cross over the line to you instead of you guys coming over to us. Yeah. And that stood out for me a lot because we see it every day. We see it every day. We see it every day in our walking life, like how people, because they don't want conflict or anything, they wouldn't say what's right because they are afraid of what people will say to them or how people will look at them because of like, when you do stuff like that in the Bible, it says that you're judging them, but there's a certain way of judging someone. You can judge someone with love, and you can also judge someone with like, how can I put this? With a way of saying, what you did was wrong, but you can learn from it. I'm not saying you must go and do it again because a mistake only happens once. When you do it again, it becomes a habit. Yeah. So listening to that, I think it stood out the most because it's something that we can reflect on every day. Like even when you're watching like anything on TV and it will have something that's they will say that it will be Christ-based, but when you look at it, you're like, whoa, this is so worldly. Like, why is it that it's so worldly? Because again, it's what you're saying. It's that one-step sin. Like, I'm not at the cliff yet, therefore I can go. But the moment it takes one person to just say, oops, and they push you and then gone. So that stood out for me the most. Like it was ringing in my head because I kept like just thinking about it the whole time till today. Like that was just like a powerful part for me.
And I think sometimes the issue there is like with sin is we see sin in isolation. Yeah. So we're like, okay, it's just this one thing, you know, it's just one, but we're not seeing the path that we're going on. Yeah. And because we're like, okay, it's just this one, but then it's the next one. And because we just see it in isolation, we excuse it. And then we're like, okay, it's fine. But as we get closer and closer, it just gets more and more dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Annabelle?
Yeah.
I want to ask her to make sure she's listening to my message.
Yeah. Okay. 10 points. What actually stood out for me most was the part about our condition and our position in Christ. Yeah. So our condition changes. It fluctuates because I think based also what Evelyn was saying, like we are in this world, so we are going to sin. You know, we're always going to miss the mark. But like that doesn't change the position that we have in Christ. Yeah. I think it's always that we think because we've sinned or we've stumbled or we've done something wrong that we can't go back. Yeah. And we think that our relationship with Christ changes because of that, or we are fake Christians, or maybe we even question our salvation. Yeah. Because when we stumble and when there's sin, right? And I loved that that surety, I think, that Ephesians does give, that it doesn't matter what your condition is, because your condition can always change. Yeah. But your position in Christ will always remain the same. Yeah. It's kind of like if your child will always be your child. Yeah. No matter what they do, like you love them unconditionally, but you are going to want to discipline them, to set them straight and on the right path. Right. And I also think sometimes maybe we take discipline or God's discipline as a punishment instead of as correction. So that part really stood out for me on Sunday.
Sure.
It's really good.
Wow. Nice. And for you, Pastor Donovan, what was your take from your own message? From your own message, your own notes.
I think the part towards the end where we speak about sometimes we don't have a sin problem, we have a worship problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I think that, like, when I was preparing, and I can't remember who wrote that, but I was like, that just stood out for me.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we underestimate worship.
Sure.
And we're like, oh, it's just the songs that we sing. It's just the, the part that we do before the preach, or, it's just to give us nice warm feelings. But it's so much more than that.
It's true.
Like worship is everything that we do. Our whole lifestyle should be worship. Yeah. And so often I think the problem that we have is that because we don't live out of gratefulness to God and a pure heart that is just like, God, I want to worship you. God, you're good and faithful. And because God doesn't satisfy our inner desires, we look for it in something else.
Sure.
And that's where sin comes in. Because God isn't meeting that deepest need in our hearts, we try and find satisfaction in something else.
Yeah. Sure. Speaking about how you put the whole worship, I remember this one video that I was watching. It was like a reel, and this lady said that a song connects you to a memory, right? So if you listen to like a worship song through your toughest times, like that moment, that song will make you cry. Even if you just hear the first key dim, you'll be like, oh, you know what I mean? Because it's like that. But she says once you've progressed in life and once you have left that how can I say that phase, right? And you listen to the song again, it doesn't hit you as much as it hit you the time you were going through a certain thing.
Right.
And she was saying that's the same thing that happens with God. She was saying that there mustn't be a difference. Like if you're going through a good time or a bad time, your heart of worship should be exactly the same. Like it should still make you cry. It should still make you like say thank you. Even though before it'll be help me, but now it'll be like thank you. But you should always be thankful even in worship. It doesn't have to be a fast song. I remember we were having a conversation. We were talking about how some fast songs make me cry because of the words. Because you're like, that is such a deep song. And you'll be dancing and you find yourself crying, but you don't understand. But you just, like at that moment, you're like, I'm just so grateful, Lord. Like you have been so good. You have done this. You're like, And then it just, there's just something about worship that does a lot to you. But when you make it like your everyday thing, it becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, when you listen to a song, you will, even in the crowd full of people, you will not be embarrassed to lift up your hands and say, oh my gosh, Lord, thank you for this moment or whatever, because I wouldn't wake up this morning, but you gave me a second chance or whatever. So making it your daily bread becomes very important. So I'm glad that you also spoke about that on Sunday as well, just for people to have that little wake-up call, to understand that you need to have that part with you in your life as well.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Ephesians Chapter 5. Pastor Donovan apparently did not complete the chapter because he only did the first half, which is strictly on, not the marriage part, but we want to do the marriage part now.
I have a reason.
I nearly said tonight.
I had a reason for that. So twofold. The one is I knew we were going to have this conversation tonight. So I was like, let's bring it up there. I think the other thing is like you can preach so much information that it gets lost. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just so much. And the other reason actually is I plan to do a series on marriage relationships in a couple of weeks. So I was like, okay, let me not go into this in depth now. Yeah. I'll do this when we get to the series.
You hear that, Donnell? You're gonna be our next guest. We're gonna each episode we're gonna switch up. It's gonna be you and Sven, then David and Michaela, and then Shunheen and Durad. So you also get your guys' chance in the spotlight. Okay, 21 questions.
People get to see you guys.
Yes, we want to see y'all. But let's start with Ephesians chapter 5 from verse 21. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. I'm going to read that one again. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. How do we feel about that?
Love it.
I mean, you guys have been married for what, 7 years?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, 6 going on 7.
Pastor Donovan seems so unsure. He's 6.
I feel like guys are always unsure. We're always like...
No, it's the other way around for me. I'm the one that's sure.
Yeah, shame.
I'm the one that's sure.
Yeah.
How do we feel about that?
I
How do
love
we
that.
apply that to our marriage?
You know what? So growing up, I always used to think that submission was
Kneeling.
kneeling, bringing the plate of food and serving my babu baka, you know.
You have never called me that before. I've never heard that before in my life.
Oh,
First time for everything. Trying to come up with new names, babe.
these names slap, man. I feel like we have a compilation. We should start a compilation and play it in the church.
Oh, goodness. Okay, we've got 2 so far. No, we'll bring more. All right, I used to think that that's what submission was.
Yeah.
And then making yourself lower so that the other person can kind of be seen or have the spotlight, or, you know. But also, I think maybe in worldly terms, just to think submission is like when somebody's going to walk all over you.
Yeah.
It's like you're a slave.
Yeah, like you're a slave and like you don't have power, right? But that verse also says, and a lot of people also focus on the wives submit to your husbands, and not the submit to each other. Because it's a two-way street.
Yes.
The wife has to submit just as much as the husband also needs to submit. But also, submission isn't that you being walked all over. It's you. Hey.
Danielle, he's so happy over there.
Right. Submission is not you like you being walked all over or anything like that. But it's like laying down your own desires so that both of your desires can be fulfilled.
Sure.
Actually, the best way I've heard it was by Andy Stanley. He spoke about a submission competition. And you can correct me here, babe, if I remember correctly. But you're pretty much saying that I submit to you and you submit to me. Like, we're going to be in competition to see who's going to submit to each other more.
Yeah.
Because because the more your partner wins or your spouse wins, the more you win.
Yeah.
Because if you submit to them and you make them feel loved and seen and heard, the more that they're going to appreciate it and reciprocate it back to you.
Sure.
So it's like you're giving more of yourself to receive more back of them.
Sure.
Did I say
That's
that
very
right,
good.
babe?
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think the other thing, like, just to speak here, is that because roles can look different, but they don't have to, just because they're different doesn't mean they're not equal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Bible says here, it speaks about wives submit to your husbands, but husbands love your wives.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like, generally, it's part of like a good it's a good thing, because like for husbands, they're looking for respect.
Yeah.
Like generally for men, we're like, I would like to be respected.
Respected,
Like, you could love me, that's nice, but I'd rather be respected. I'd rather you respect me.
Respect me as Baba Wekaya.
Whatever that means. Okay.
Part of the house.
You can help me out here, Randy. But and for generally for women, it's they want to be loved. They
Yes.
want to be adored. They want to be like, you're beautiful and you're precious. So
Flowered with attention.
flowered with attention. So I think, and I think what Paul is doing here is really intentional. And we also got to remember this is super cross-culturally. Like, this is really countercultural of when Paul wrote this, because during that time, like, the men would have all the say and the women would have very little say.
Yeah.
And so when he comes in and says, husbands, you should love your wives as Christ loves the church, that is revolutionary what he's saying there.
Sure.
And I think for us to realize that as we're leading, it doesn't have to look the same, but both parties should be valued in how they're expressing their love to one another.
You know what I always say? I always say, like, the husband is the head and the wife's the neck, because you need your neck to move your head, right? So if you guys don't work together, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? So 9 times out of 10, you'd find women that want to be the head, but they are the neck. Not to say like what you said, that you equal, but you're not equal.
Yeah.
So you
Equal but
can't.
different.
Yes, equal but different. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you can't try and do something that your husband is naturally made to do, or as the wife, you're making the husband try to do something that's naturally made for the wife to do, and then now you're swapping roles, and then you start butting heads now because it's not making sense to you guys or whatever. Instead of having like a firm communication about it, like, yes, sometimes you might have to help each other out with certain things, but like there has to be like an agreement toward that. You're going to say, okay, Nick, I'm ready to move the head. Like, let's move. You know what I mean? Not just... And then, you know what I mean?
Could I maybe throw a question in here that we could maybe just chat about? Randy, I'll throw it to you. So when we speak about like submission and working together, like for you guys, how would you make major decisions in your marriage?
I'm not gonna lie, I make all the decisions, and then I just tell him afterwards. But
maybe that's what we should talk about.
No, she's not joking. She does.
But then, okay, for me, like I'm like a planner. Like, you need to tell me why this is gonna work. Like, you need to show me. Like, I'm like a PowerPoint. Like, in my mind, I will lay out everything. This
Pros
is
and
how,
cons.
this is how it's gonna work. And then. Like, now, the parts where we would butt heads is when I'd ask my husband, so what do you think? Oh, I don't know. Then for me, I'd be like, okay, I'm taking this responsibility back. And then at the end of the day, even whatever decision I make, like, I'll still ask him, and then he will see, oh, okay, maybe it will kind of work, or maybe it wouldn't work. We'll try it out both ways, and then we'll see which way works. But 9 times out of 10, I do tend to like push it, and then I had to learn how to like back away from that, because at some point I kind of saw that, no, man, it feels like I'm the only one who's making the decisions, and I'm not allowing him to have like an input or whatever. So now, I kid you not, guys, even if it's buying paint, I'm like, what color do you think we should buy? But before I'll be like, I think that this will be the perfect.
Would it also be a little bit of how you guys process decisions?
Yeah.
Where you'll be quite analytical, and maybe you'll be a bit more like, you'd want some time to think through it, process.
That's him.
Yeah.
I'm like, now, hey, results. So, yeah, it does. Yeah.
We're a bit different.
Yes. How do we make decisions?
You usually tell me what to do, and I go, yes, sir. Just kidding. That's not how it works. I think we normally talk things through. Like, I think you also you need a bit of time to process. But I mean, it also depends on like the weight and the severity, I guess, of the decisions and, like how it's going to impact us. So like with some decisions that are like really like, okay, this is going to change the trajectory of our life kind of decisions. Like, I think we both take time to think about it, to process it, and to pray about it. Like separately, and then come together as well and be like, okay, maybe this is what I feel the Lord saying, or that's what you feel the Lord saying, and see like if it makes sense. But like with other like small things, what do we do?
I think I decide and I just let you know.
Yeah, works.
But I think so. Like I think the other thing on decisions is that like you want to make decisions together, but there's some things you've got to also be able to kind of delegate authority. Like you don't want each party to be like, oh, I can't do anything without asking my husband or my wife. Like, are you laughing because that's you, Randy? I'm getting concerned in this conversation. I'm like, this might turn into marriage counseling.
No, I'll speak after you, though.
So I just think like you can't like when sometimes people would say stuff like this, they'll say, oh, marriage is like I remember when I got married, people would be like, oh, are you ready to have like the ball and chain in your life? I was like, no, have you met my wife?
Yeah.
She's not like that at all. Like, what are you talking about? Because I wanted to break down that stereotype that when you get married, like all your fun is taken away. Like marriage should be the most fun. Like it's an adventure that you go on with your spouse. Like this should be amazing, And so sometimes you make decisions, and sometimes these decisions we need to make this together.
Yeah. Like going on holiday, like little decisions like that. So like Donovan's the planner. I'm just like a tra-la-la-la-la, just take me anywhere,
Time and space, just let me know.
right. But then Donovan will be like also the planner, wants to plan like every single detail.
Yeah.
But then we also had to learn to compromise that, because then you also want a bit of flexibility, a bit of spontaneity as well. So it's like, okay, we'll plan where we'll go, we'll plan where we'll have breakfast, but then the rest of the day is open.
Free stuff.
Kind of thing. So, or I don't know, me spending money.
That's another topic.
Topic for another day. Not really.
For another day.
Yeah, but I mean, there's like an acceptable amount that we agree. You can spend so much without really asking for permission.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like, I'm not gonna go purchase a new car or like buy a house. Without like speaking to my husband first, kind of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
So you guys have agreed on a limit.
I don't know if we have a specific limit.
The way y'all looked at each other,
But I think we have.
very concerned.
Yeah.
No, we don't have a limit, but I mean, you kind of know like the value of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think we know each other well enough now to know like when something is going to be a concern or not.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you breaking the stereotypes, did you break it or are you still on your journey?
Breaking the stereotype of, for marriage?
Yeah.
I think it's because I think this is like a worldly mindset that like we have to keep breaking in following Jesus, where it's like the stereotype of like, you're having your last fun now you're going to get married. That's why like a bachelor's is like, this is your last time,
night of freedom.
go crazy,
Stupid.
But I mean, that's not freedom. I think the other thing is we have an incorrect understanding of what freedom really is.
Yeah.
And so we think freedom is I can make any choice and then I'm going to be free. That's not true freedom.
No, that's not freedom.
And that's not healthy freedom, actually.
Yeah.
Freedom is within a boundary because boundaries give you safety. Like even as a child, a child is looking for boundaries and safety because they know, okay, this is how far I can go. And then I know my parents going to be like, no,
Don't
what
do
you doing
that.
there? No, there's going to be consequences here. There's safety in that. And it's the same for us. Like where there's freedom within a boundary, that's where we flourish.
Yeah.
Sure.
True.
That's good.
Agreed. I will say though this about the submitting to one another. It's a very tricky situation. It's not as easy as black and white because it's a love is a very trial and error type of thing. Like it's not there's no blueprint for you to do it right all the time.
Yeah.
You literally have to test one another because everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
What works for my marriage may not work in your marriage. So you literally have to butt heads at times in order for you to really understand one another, to each other's limits as to what is good for your marriage and what is not.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you should do crazy things, okay, especially if it involves other people. But what I'm saying is that, like, for instance, my wife is talking about making decisions. My wife makes a lot of decisions, like a lot without me. And for the most part, it doesn't bother me that much. It's more of her coming to me to ask me, but she's already made the decision. That part like irks me the most because I'm like, why are we having this conversation?
You made the decision already.
You made the decision already. Don't make it seem like we are having a conversation when you've already made the decision. For the most part, like I don't mind because for the most part she does make good decisions, especially if it has something to do with our home. Like I've given the reins to her, like, okay, you can do whatever you want. Except for MySpace, because she has
I need to touch that space,
this woman is obsessed with MySpace, the game, my workspace.
Has to color coordinate, I'm just saying.
For me, yes.
Yeah, I'm
Not
just
for
saying,
you.
in our house, if Donovan left me to all the decision in our space,
Your whole house will be pink.
yeah, pretty much.
We know. We know.
Please pray for me.
Trust me. But yeah, man, it's a matter of trial and error. You literally have to butt heads at times in order for you to grasp the other person. Like, you're not going to understand everything from the jump. Like, that's the one thing that I've grown to understand in my marriage, because I've had like thoughts about marriage for the longest time. I think since the age of 10. Because I've always viewed being married and having children, because I was the only child. So I've always had that desire, because my dad died when I was a toddler. So I grew up without a father. I grew up without siblings. So these two things were very important to me, being a father and a husband. So I've always had this desire, and I've always everything that I watched, everything that I listened to was centered around me being a father and a husband. But then now I am a father and a husband, and I'm realizing everything that I've learned
is wrong.
It's not necessarily wrong. It's more
Not what I expected.
You only prepared to a certain extent. After that, it's pretty much freestyling, because you have to learn with each case.
I like that though, because you like what he's saying is correct in that you had your expectations of what marriage should be, your own background, your own ideas, your own desires. Evelyn, on the other hand, also had the same. So now you take two different people from two different backgrounds with two different experiences, and you put them together and you say, make it work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So there's bound to be conflict. There's bound to be butting heads. We don't process things the same. We don't see the world the same. Like, the only thing that's probably the same is that we both love each other and we fall for each other hard, and we want to spend the rest of our lives together. Right. But one thing, though, that I think there should be some common, because like you said also, Randy, that every marriage is going to look different. But I also do think that there should be some common things that look the same.
Principles,
Same principles, yes. Like healthy communication.
Amen.
Like knowing how to resolve conflict in a healthy way.
Amen to that.
Not that because you're definitely going to have conflict.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, but how do we resolve conflict in a healthy way so that the love still stays and that the love still grows?
Can I just say on that, I think sometimes like the worldly teaching teaches about chemistry, while godly marriage is based on covenant. And I think sometimes we confuse chemistry and covenant.
Come on now.
And so we look at like Hollywood, we look at Disney stories. Oh, they met, they fell hopelessly in love, and
they lived happily
and then they
ever
lived happily ever after. And like everyone's like, oh, that's great. There's this, and usually when you meet someone, it's not realistic. There's this chemistry between the two of you. But what always happens in a relationship is chemistry fades over time.
Amen.
And if your relationship is only based with chemistry, it's why so often you hear people say things like, oh, we just felt like we fell out of love.
Fell out of love,
What does that mean? It doesn't mean they don't love each other anymore. It means they don't feel the chemistry that they once had. And when you base your marriage on chemistry, like that's not a sustainable way of having a healthy marriage. It's based on covenant. It's based on a relationship and the covenant you have between you and your spouse, which is why like that friendship part of the relationship is so important to develop. So you're not, and I mean, it's good to have the chemistry there. There's nothing wrong with that. But the core of the relationship needs to be a covenant of friendship. And so if you don't have that, because when you get older, like chemistry fades away, covenant needs to remain the same.
Sure. Come on.
Also heard, I think my old pastor, when I was like still a teenager, used to say that he used to say, you spell marriage WORK, because married is work. But then he also used to say that marriage is two people that forgive each other every day. So because you're going to butt heads like all the time. But then again, are you going to sleep angry? Or are you bringing yesterday's problems into today? Are you carrying today's problems into tomorrow? So I think even that forgiveness is also key. I think, again, coming back to like the worldly thing, it's human nature. Like you hold a grudge because, maybe you were really deeply hurt by a situation. And, like, not to take away from people that, like, from situations that really have hurt, like that's a story for another day. And, like, obviously there's wisdom in every situation and discerning what's right for you then. But, like, in the general is that when you do get into the arguments and you carrying on, like, are you still holding on to what happened back then? Sure. Are you still holding on to him leaving his shoes under the coffee table?
I feel like that was directed at someone.
I feel like that sounds like a targeted attack on mine.
Yeah, I do feel some type of way about the shoes, random places.
That's what's so interesting about you guys is like usually the lady is the cleaner, more like organized
he's
one.
the OCD.
For you guys, that's
not
you.
the case in my marriage. I told you.
You could be combing your hair and you'd be like, take your comb. I'm still busy with it. So I had to learn that too. And I think also, Randy, what you were saying about, was it Annabelle that was saying that you are raised in two different homes? Like, I grew up in a two-parent home. He grew up with mostly women and older people. I grew up with multiple siblings, and he was the only child, and he was like 23, right? So I'm always like, I like people around me. My husband is like, he just wants to be alone. And for the longest, I used to wonder, does he not want to hang out with me? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean?
It feels hurtful. Like, why are you rejecting me?
Why are you rejecting me? Like, what's going on? But then after some time, I realized that no, man, he grew up as an only child. Then obviously he is going to act the way that he's acting. And then now you'd find that he could be doing something. I'll just go there, hold his hand. I'll just chill there and hold his hand. And for him, it would be like, oh, she's here, great. And then we'll just hold hands, not say anything. But because I'm just there, for him, it just feels like, okay, my wife is here, And then we'll be so random. Do you want some coffee? Like, okay, are you going to make it? Am I going to make it? Oh, okay, but you made it yesterday. Da, da, da. And then, like, for some people, they'll be like, but you guys are not having a communication. I'm like, no, but then that's his time. And then I also have, like, my time. And then when we have conversations, we go on until, like, 3 a.m. in the morning. Like, we will talk and talk and talk. So, again, two different backgrounds. You just need to find, like, you need to understand each other, guys. You need to understand.
Find your niche, what works for you.
Marriage is work. And people have this fairy tale thing. Oh, it's going to be the beautiful wedding. And it's the after that's marriage.
Yeah, that's when the real work starts. After the walking down the aisle, after the party's over. Yes, after that, that's when the actual work starts.
That's when you
Marriage is exactly like funerals. Everybody assumes like
funerals.
Yeah.
I've never heard this illustration before.
No.
Oh,
hear me out. The funeral, right? From the passing to the day of the actual funeral, everybody's present, everybody checks up on you, everything.
Yes.
But after the person has gone into the ground, everybody goes home. That's the end of it. But that's when the grief actually really starts, because now there's no one there anymore.
Reality check.
There's no checking, there's no hugs, there's no prayers, there's no nothing. You're just on your own. That's when you really get to deal with it. Marriage is the same way, but it's the other way around. The day one, which is like when you say your I do's, everybody's there. But then now you go home with the bill of everything that you paid for. And now that's when you start your foundation, and everybody else moves on, because they have their pictures already for the gram,
they have their pictures.
They move on. Now you two are stuck with the I do's, because now you have to really live out your vows. When you say in sickness and in health, your partner is going to be sick. What are you going to do?
And they're going to get man flu, which is the worst flu.
It's very serious, guys. It's a very serious disease.
Pandemic.
Like it's hurt their arms, and
they need to be cared for. Like, yes.
Yeah, I feel like the wives need prayers when the husbands have man flu. Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. Like, so far in your marriage, what is the best piece of advice that you've gotten
from people?
Yeah.
I think for me actually, was when one of these ladies said, you never stop dating your husband. Like, you never stop dating your husband. You never stop dating your wife. They say that spark should never go away. Like, she said, if you ever feel like the spark's dying out, go find a rock or whatever and start and then find it again. Because what happens is, like, if you put in like effort, like with my husband now, we're so childish, guys. We are so childish. Like, I was even saying this to Annabelle this other day. Like, there's some days where we don't feel like cooking and we look at each other, we're like, bro, what are we going to eat for supper? And then we're like, oh, let's just get fat cakes. You know what I mean? And then we're good. Or even sometimes, I know my husband has this thing of like being, he loves things, but he will never ask you to get it for him. So I know my husband likes biltong, he likes this, he likes that. And then there's...
Funny you knew a place where you could get good biltong.
Right? Add.
Peter, okay, plugging you. Karoo biltong. Okay.
Just saying.
Sponsor Amalinda Baptist Podcast.
Just saying. Plug you.
So he likes these fudge, coconut fudge thingies. Now, I always get them for him because I don't eat coconut. So, like, I would randomly... I
enjoy them because
and he loves them. And I would always make... Like, I can see sometimes he's having a bad day. You can read your partner by, like, messaging, like, how they typing or how they, like, this person is not having a good day. Then you could just randomly surprise... Because, like I said, my husband's OCD, so he'll pack my bag and he'll be like, what do you have for me? Like, and then he would open up and you just see the spark on his face. He would light up, and I'm like, bro, it's just fudge. But for him, it's like, you thought of me. So I think that's why when that lady was saying that you never stop dating your husband or your wife, is you continuously need to just always let them know that you're thinking of them. Yeah. Like, even if it's the smallest things.
Work hard in the relationship.
Work hard and like keep going. So
to highlight what my wife is saying. Last week, Friday, I hurt my shoulder, right? Well,
how did that happen, Randy?
No, we're not going to get into that.
It wasn't me.
We're not going to get into that. I hurt my shoulder and back, right? So the whole of Saturday, I spent at the hospital. So the next day, which is the Sunday, it was Father's Day. So this is my first Father's Day, mind you me. So I was really hurt at the fact that I couldn't do anything. Like, literally, I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you couldn't go to church.
I couldn't go to church. I couldn't pick up my daughter. Like, all the things that I'm used to doing, I couldn't do anymore. And I was having such an awful day because I'm like, this is my first Father's Day. I should be having fun today, but I'm not. And then my wife came home late. Like, I was livid. I was like, where is this woman? And I had so much pride. I'm like, I'm not going to call her to ask her where she is. Because I'm like, yo, church ended. I was like, oh, where is she? And she comes home after 1, right? And I looked at her and I just grabbed Ivy and said, come, let's go to sleep because it's a nap time. And then my wife goes to the house and she gets everyone to sign a card for me. Happy Father's Day card, right? So I'm like watching anime. Yeah, Sunday's my anime day. Yeah. So I'm like watching anime. My wife walks in and she comes sit next to me and I can feel she's looking at me. And I'm like, okay, maybe she wants to explain where she's been, but I'm like, I'm not going to give her the time of day. I'm like, I'm having an awful day. I really don't want to hear this. And she says, here. I'm like, what? And mind you, I'm not looking at her.
He's giving me a side eye this time. He's like, what?
I'm like, what? And I'm still looking at my anime. And eventually she gives me the bag. And from the moment she gave me the bag, like, my heart dropped because I'm like, oh, it's Father's Day.
And then you feel a bit guilty.
Yeah, I feel guilty. I feel guilty. And now I look at everything inside the bag. Like, she got all my favorite things in there. And she had...
Well done.
I'm thoughtful like that.
Because we drink coffee all the time. So she got me a Father's Day mug. Which I absolutely love, by the way, which is huge. Yeah. I've been saying I want a big cup.
He wants a big cup.
Like, my wife listens. And then she also got me a picture, like, which is actually my first picture. Yeah, of Ivy in the house. And she framed it for me. And it's basically a collage of me and Ivy's pictures together. And
that's so thoughtful.
Like, I cried. Like, okay, I'm not supposed to be saying this, but I cried.
Guys, he hugged me for so long, my asthma kicked in. I was like, okay, go breathe.
I felt so small, man, because I'm like, here I was, like, having an awful day, and my wife like understood the assignment, even though I didn't ask her to do anything. I didn't ask for anything. Like, you know, when men have their day, they normally say, I want the day off. I don't want to do yada, yada, yada. I basically had the day off because I was injured anyway. But my wife gave me everything that I needed without me saying I needed. Like, she can read me that well. Yeah. And I had the best day ever. Like, till this day, I'm still emotional about it. And get you an Evelyn, man. Get you an Evelyn. That's all I'm going to say, husband. Get you an Evelyn. Someone who's going to listen to you. Someone who's going to be present.
Get you a crocodile surfer. Yeah.
Woolworths is taking shots.
I need to stop for these names. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, and about best advice?
Best advice, I think I got was don't go to bed angry.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen. And I think for us, that is literal because we've had times where we've like had an argument or a disagreement. Mostly we don't really argue much. And I'm just like, I ain't talking to him. He's going to see, I'm not going to give him the time of day. And I'm like, I'm stubborn, I'm adamant because I am right, he is wrong, and he needs to apologize.
Typical woman
and most of the time, the guys are like, it's so peaceful. What a great evening. This is awesome.
He literally said that to me one time. He was like, oh, I didn't realize you were mad. For some reason, I was having such a peaceful day.
It happens, guys. Like, you don't realize that, she's angry. She's like, he will feel my wrath. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're like,
I can peaceful day all of a sudden.
Day off. Yeah, I think for us that has been good because we literally get to the point where we cannot fall asleep if things are not good between us. There was one time where I was really, really, really stubborn, and I'm just like, I don't care. I'm going to sleep. It was an awful night. But even like when you wake up in the day, like you just feel with so much heaviness and there's so much dread, and you're just like, okay, it's just not worth it. I think for us that's the best thing. Like, so we always resolve whatever issue we had. There's one of our series we watched is How I Met Your Mother. There's a couple there called Lily and Marshall, and like when they fight they have a thing called pause.
Pause, yeah. They have a terrible system.
It's terrible.
Yes, it is a terrible thing. Because and also they could pause for like so long, right? Yeah. But also you don't get to the crux of the matter and actually resolve. Yeah. Also think sometimes it goes back to the whole thing of forgiving one another, right? So you can't pause your fight for weeks. Like you have to get to a stage where like, okay, I've forgiven you.
Plus, you want to know where your shirt is, man.
Right.
I can't stay quiet because I'm like, where did I put this? And I know he packs everything. I'm like, I need to ask him. But I'm like, silent.
I'm the one who packs everything, so he's going to ask me where stuff is.
Yeah.
So someone has to talk.
Yeah.
Icebreaker.
Yeah, and also I need my coffee in the morning because my husband makes me coffee like every morning. Most mornings when we don't buy coffee.
Pastor Donovan.
Yes, so I'm like, I have to speak to him. I need my morning juice.
Otherwise you're not getting your coffee.
What about you, Pastor Donovan? What is the best advice you've gotten?
I think the other thing that Annabelle mentioned earlier, like a submission competition, like you're trying to serve your spouse. So not what I can get, but what I can give. Yeah. I think that's like that whole thing is really important.
Sure.
Yeah, you kind of stepped on what I was going to say, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think we kind of need to
wrap this up. Yeah. The best advice I got was communication.
Yeah.
What they were initially telling me, they said there's like communication is a coin. Like there's two sides of it. There's the side where you get to say your piece, and there's the part where you listen. But when you listen, you don't listen to react or respond, but you listen to understand where the person is coming from. It's not about you. When you're listening, it's about them. So try and understand them, what they are saying, where they're coming from, and why it bothers them.
Sure.
And don't make it about you. But marriage is a selfless thing, man. Like you can't marry someone and make it about you. You have to be selfless because you're literally serving one another each and every single day. And if you serve each other, no one's going to lack anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's very good.
That's good.
That's good.
And on that note, we should end it. I would love to make this longer, but unfortunately, time is not on our side, and our guests are here. So, yeah, we're going to leave you. We're going to go have hot chocolate.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, ladies, for joining. It was great to have your voices on the podcast today.
Yes.
Thank you for joining and your input.
We should do this more often.
Yeah. And wherever you're listening, it'd be great if you could like or subscribe, give us a review if you're on Apple or Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube. And we'd love to see you again next week.
Yes, please drop the questions, man. Let us know how y'all feel about the episodes. What touched you, where you've learned something new, because we would love to have that open community with you guys where we can grow together. Okay? Peace and love.
Peace and love.